We've all at one point thought, if only I could go back to that, those times were much better than now. But if we remove the emotion in that statement, the nostalgia, it probably was the exact same as now. We just like to think it was better. If you were transported back, would it really be better? The word nostalgia is defined by Oxford as a sad feeling mixed with pleasure when you think of happy times in the past. It's the feeling of watching your favorite TV show again, hearing the old music you used to listen to. It can be remembering a childhood memory that you've forgotten. It can be everything from listening to old Minecraft music to walking through your old childhood neighborhood. Nostalgia originated from the Greek word nostos, which means return or homecoming, and algos, which means pain, so return pain basically. It was the Swiss physician Johannes Hofer who coined the term in 1688. He argued that the disease was similar to paranoia, except that the sufferer was manic with longing, specifically longing for an object or place. This disease came to be associated with soldiers, particularly in Switzerland, who were reportedly so susceptible to nostalgia when they heard a particular Swiss milking song, Kureyen, that its playing was punishable by death. French doctors believed that nostalgia should be treated by inciting pain and terror. The Russian army had a so-called outbreak of nostalgia in 1733 on its way to Germany. The general told the troops that the first one to come down with the nostalgic virus would be buried alive, and actually made good on this threat a couple of times. So nostalgia spread like a virus during multiple wars across Europe, and it's understandable. The soldiers were in terrible conditions and most likely longed to get back home as soon as possible. But today we don't see nostalgia as a sort of mental disease, but it can still be painful. Why? As humans, we tend to recall the past more fondly than the present. This is a bias within our brains that runs parallel with the feeling of nostalgia. This is called the Rosy retrospection bias, coming from the phrase rose-tinted glasses, where people see things as better than they really were. I think we can all relate to a time when someone was talking about the good old days. Maybe it was you or someone around you. Think of the phrase, things just aren't how they used to be. It's almost as if no matter what the actual world is like right now, people will always think that times were better in the past. Maybe for older people, their recollection of being a young adult, free of worries and responsibilities and rich with pleasure, paints a rosy picture of the past. Meanwhile, the news on TV shows global war and suffering. Although it's likely that there were similar wars when they were younger, these are not the events they remember or associate with their younger days. They selectively memorize the good parts, leaving out all the bad that came with it. And this can lead to depression or anxiety. If the present is so terrible, what does the future hold? There's a duality to nostalgia. It can be good or bad, balanced. And over time, what was nostalgic can become traumatic, or on the flip side, what was once a traumatic experience can become a source of nostalgia later on in life. For example, someone with a traumatic childhood can remember it very fondly, and realize years later that it wasn't as good after all. As we go further and further away from our memories, they become more and more fuzzy. So what parts are left? For some, the good parts. For others, bad parts. The specific term for these memories is an autobiographical memory. In literature, an autobiography is a self-written account of a person's life. It's a narrative that goes deep into the author's experience, thoughts, and feelings, often from childhood to the present. You might have read an autobiography before. People such as Nelson Mandela, Johnny Cash, and Bob Dylan all have one. It's like a first-person look into a person's life, since the only person who can truly understand you is you. Now imagine that you yourself subconsciously create an autobiography with your memory. This is autobiographical memory. It's a memory system consisting of episodes from your life. It's a combination of personal experiences and specific objects, people, and events, experienced at different times and places. This is what plays a crucial part in forming our sense of self and identity, since we're a product of our environment and experiences. But these aren't just any memories. They are carefully selected and most likely contain strong emotional and subjective elements. They aren't just dry recollections of events, but are colored by your emotion and interpretations. This emotional aspect gives us an answer to why some people can look back at an event as a positive memory, whilst another person who also was at the event and had a similar objective experience can look back at it as a terrible memory. It's all extremely subjective, and rightfully so. After all, it's your autobiography that's being written. I might have had a negative tone towards nostalgia throughout this video. There are actually really positive effects of nostalgia. An example is how it acts as a buffer against feelings of loneliness. When we recall happy memories, a lot of the times they include other people, be it your family or friends. They are usually centered around times when you were with the people and places you love. This makes us feel more connected to others across the board. In a study, researchers found that people who were asked to write about an event from their past that made them feel sentimental longing for the past felt loved and supported, and this, in turn, helped buffer them against loneliness. Another one found that when people felt nostalgic about times in their life when they interacted with members of an outgroup, for example, teenagers recalling fun times with older adults, they felt less prejudice towards that group. The meaning of life is a deeply personal subject that many people are looking for. By having a sense of meaning in life is rooted in knowing that your existence matters and that your life has a purpose. Comparing nostalgia to other actions, such as recalling a positive past event or imagining a desired future, focusing on nostalgic events led people to feel their lives had more meaning. Especially activities like listening to music from the past or reading lyrics to old songs made people feel loved, socially connected, and increased their meaning of life. But why are films and music such a big deal when it comes to nostalgia? There's pretty much a new film or game every year that tries to ride on the nostalgic hype of fans. They build up some anticipation, but they're never as good as you expect them to be. Alice Through the Looking Glass is one that was expected to be really good, but was received really badly, with a score of 29% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 48% audience score. And there's countless of these films. Pinocchio 2022, 102 Dalmatians, Dumbo 2019. You've probably also seen a series or a movie that you loved when you were younger, but when you go back to it and watch it today, it probably wasn't as good as you remember it. Or maybe it's still that same movie that you remembered and loved. Maybe it was truly an amazing movie. Studios want to play off this emotion, trying to capture the nostalgic audience that will love that certain film, whether it still holds up today or not, so they keep pumping out new versions, remastered editions and reboots every year. Why do we have this connection to media such as films? Well, I think they act as a kind of time capsule. A memory that you might have had 20 years ago will probably be quite fuzzy, but a film that was released 20 years ago still looks the same and still feels the same. It acts as a clear flashback to the past, maybe even bringing back memories of the time whilst watching the film. That's why many people rewatch their favorite film over and over again. It's very comforting after all. As I said, nostalgia truly highlights the good memories, but why do so many people see it as a feeling of sadness? Shouldn't you be happy for the good times you had? I would call it bittersweet. On one hand, it's the happy moments you had earlier in life, which is comforting. The lack of unpredictability creates this warm blanket of safety and security. The future, however, is scary. The happy moments you once had are gone. The only thing that exists of it is the fading memory, and you will never be able to relive them. But don't let your longing for the past take away from your happiness in the present. Let the nostalgic feeling come and go, but don't let it overwhelm you.